Welcome to Beyond Thundera Podcast. I'm Sean Buddha McKeone, author of the Hall of Omens and Hall of Omens Thunderverse, and I am alongside ThunderCats writer, script consultant, and all-around jolly guy, Peter Lawrence, the walking question mark. And today we are joined by none other than Dennis Woodyard, who was a writer on ThunderCats. He was also a secondary character designer on ThunderCats, and as well, he worked on SilverHawks, the comic strip, and outside of the Rankin world, he worked on, shows such as Galaxy Rangers, Gargoyles, and ExoSquad, among so many more shows, which I hope to touch on several of them during this. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
Excuse me.
I mean, obviously you did a lot of things on with Rankin Bass, never mind everything else. I actually didn't realize. But let's start. What were you doing before Rankin Bass? How did it all start for you? The whole animation goal.
Okay. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York. Was there from 69 to 72. And after that, I was going to be, I wanted to be illustrator and a comic book artist. And in school, I took a minor in animation. I always had an interest in animation, so that was always there. And in the mid 70s, I got pulled into small animation studios in New York City and started working in animation. First things I did was, first was like film strips for educational film strips, which they did mostly myths and fairy tales and things like that, which I really loved, actually. I mean, a couple of things end up dovetailing with old movies I liked, like Harryhausen's Jason and the Argonauts. I had to do a story called a Hercules story called Dragon's Teeth that had the fight of the skeletons in it. So I got to do my own real illustration of that. But a friend of mine from school, Eric Iser, we worked for a small company called Wingstar, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this animation thing. I think that you can help us with." And it was movie spots. Remember the old days before Spotify and all those things? They used to have these novelty record spots would be on Saturday morning, cheap record spots. Get now the greatest hits of so-and-so. Oh, I did a bunch of those. And that's where I started doing a little animation. That got me into a place called Image Factory that did stuff for ads. It is the tags for movies and commercials. And I did graphic animation, basically. You know, the whole time when Superman came out, all that slit scan titles, that became a real big thing for advertisers. And everybody wanted that in their ads. And my company, the company I work for, Image Factory, they did a lot of that stuff. I didn't do a lot of it, but you know, I did some camera work with them. But in the mid 80s, after I left them, I was working with a small company called Doros Animation, and one of their clients was one of the guys who started Galaxy Rangers. He was a production manager at Galaxy Rangers. He used to come shoot the openings and stuff there. So he put an ad in the paper, and I saw it. I said, "Hey, man, I like to do comics and stuff. Let me show you my stuff." And I got the job with the Galaxy Rangers. I was one of the 3 original artists for the Galaxy Rangers that we designed characters and backgrounds and storyboards. I did a lot of storyboards for the shows. They were really not the greatest production people. They didn't know what they were doing because they had done a show called Thundercats, not Thundercats, sorry, Thunderbirds 2086 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And all they did was take a Japanese animation and they redubbed it. So they thought, "Hey, we can do animation that way." So they basically they did scratch tracks for the dialogue. The animation was done by TMS, a really great Japanese company, and they did all the animation. And then when the animation came back, they just had actors try to flap, talk to the flapping. Yeah, it was a mess, but it looked good, and it actually got a cult following. It had a great opening, like ThunderCats. It had a great opening, which really people still remember. But I was recommended for ThunderCats by one of the guys I worked with at Galaxy Rangers, Ed Lee. Peter Picallion had called Ed Lee saying they were looking for artists for the last season or whatever, ThunderCats. I guess Pepe and Bob were deciding to move on. And I got recommended. So I came in and talked to Lee. Of course, I thought it was a man until I met her. Lee, okay. Oh, that's cool. No problem. So I got hired. And the first thing they said, like, this is what we need you to look at the review footage that came back, because I had done that before. I knew animation. And then he said, well, do you also draw? And they showed him my portfolio. And they said, well, can you do some drawings for us for the last season? And I remember some of the first things I submitted to Peter. He said, no, that looks like Galaxy Rangers. You can't draw like that for us.
Oh.
I said, yeah, you're right. So I had to learn the style of Rankin and Bass. I mean, for ThunderCats, that was already established. I mean, I truly admit I was lucky. All I had to do was one or two pencil sketches, not even finished sketches, and maybe a turnaround here or there. And Pacific Animation Company made it look good, So that's how I got to the Rankin and Bass, because I was recommended by another artist. And
Dennis, roughly what number out of the 130 of ThunderCats? What are we talking about when you first joined?
I joined at episode 96, which is
wow. Do you know what? I never realized it was that late. I never realized.
I came in because I have my old book. This is my book that has all my drawings for the show.
All right.
It's all online too.
Yeah, I love that you still have that too. And also,
I have a lot of stuff. Totem of Dara, written by J. Larry Carroll.
Right.
And the date on the script was September 30th, 87.
Right. Okay.
It was number 96. So that's what I know. I came in and I had to do drawings. Just.
So
yeah,
you were actually looking at footage on ThunderCats that came back, or were we already getting footage on something else?
No, I don't think you were getting footage on ThunderCats. You might have, because that's, again, I was just, anything that came through the door, I was told to look at and make retake notes on.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the production schedule was there, but that's when I started drawing stuff. But I know I looked at some stuff on SilverHawks. I only remember like a couple of shows on SilverHawks that I actually looked at, but a lot of the comic strip stuff afterwards, I was doing that. And then when we started solidly working on ThunderCats, I started doing more drawings.
The way Rankin Bass would, well, we've got this recommendation, this guy called Dennis Woodyard, get him in, and we'll see. It's like, oh, you draw as well? Is that, it is so different to today. Where you have to have your folio. You have to.
No, I did. I mean, I honestly must have.
No. I know you had a folio, but now it's like, what's your mission statement?
Yeah.
How many, what's your health record? It's unbelievable. And basically at ThunderCats and Rankin Bass, actually, in general, if you said, I'm not sure about you necessarily, but anybody said, well, I want to try my hand at that, or I want to do this, or generally speaking, Lee or whoever it was would say, yeah, okay, we'll give it a shot.
Well, as a David Critton's book I wrote that he interviewed me on, I say that was one of my favorite working experiences, because it was such a small shop. You got to do a lot of different things, and that's one of my things. I mean, I said, on my online, I call myself a journeyman artist, because I've done a lot of different things, and just branch off from different things. I don't like to be pigeonholed, I found the higher I got up as far as drawing in California as a director and storyboard artist, I did less. I wasn't after I think Rankin and not Rankin and Bass, but ExoSquad. might have been the last show I designed any characters on at any given time, because all of a sudden they had whole blocks, a crew of character designers. You had background designers. You had people who just did your props. All that stuff was separated. So when you came into a big production like that, unless you really carved out a heavy style or had a great style like a Bruce Timm or something like that, or Will Mineo, who I also worked with, it's like you just did your little piece, and that was
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, we talked about this a lot, Buddha. You get stereotyped too. I mean, oh yeah, okay, this is what Dennis does, and that's it. And the fact that you could do something else is of absolutely no relevance to most of them. And you're right. I mean, Rankin Bass was a very small shop, and but it's funny though. I talking to Chuck Hasagawa, who I realize now must have been like a kind of peripatetic spy. he, he knows everything that happened.
Yeah.
And he'll say, well, you were constantly fighting with Lee. What? I don't remember that. So, I mean, I'm sure he's got secrets about you, which will be revealed.
Yeah, we'll get them out of them.
So, Dennis, what, when you came, Bob and Pepe were working on the character designs?
I don't know. When I came in, again, they put me in a little office just outside the reception area. I had my little office there. I just only two spots I really have an affection for, and was my little office, and where I had to do in the front, where the video player was, and I would review stuff. And every now and then people would pop in, like Peter would pop in once in a while and catch me cursing at the screen, because I would catch stuff that's like, what the fuck is that? He's like, what did you say? I never hear you curse. What did you say?
You're talking about Peter Bacalia.
No, I'm talking about you. You caved in on me. I was watching something, someone like a real stupid mistake, and I said, son of a bitch. And then you looked at me like, what? What did you say? Never hear you curse. Oh, you haven't stuck in this room long enough. I heard curse all the time. But
just scroll back a bit. One of the questions that I was asked recently was, how much production was there in New York? And I mean, animation, obviously, too. Well, I mean, I guess live action too. But I don't remember. Did they do My Little Pony in New York?
They might have been, and I think they, because I have friends in the business still who did. It just went out of my head. Raggedy Ann and Andy, the movie, was there. New York, because when I worked in New York in the 70s and 80s, and actually there's a book coming out soon. I'll have to find the title for it and send it to you guys later. That's going to recall that era of from the 70s to the 90s of New York animation, because most of the studios in New York at the time were just small studios, like 3-person studios, and they mostly worked for either animation, education, or like PBS. My wife actually worked on some shows that did stuff for Sesame Street. They would do the little animated segments in Sesame Street, or for like openings. Well, again, commercial for show openings. I did something I got it on a wall over here someplace. Monday Night Football, Monday Night Baseball, which I got an award for, which I didn't care about. It's like, who is this company? I didn't know what this. And so that was the stuff that was done. We did the opening, some commercials or opening or spots for Star Trek, the first Star Trek movie. We did a 15-second trailer teaser, and they only gave us one piece of art. There was a ship coming from behind a planet that we faked the planet, and the Star Trek went by, and then the Enterprise went by, and then just the title, and it showed in movie houses.
Oh wow.
Or we did one for this at this place, Image Factory. We did one for Roots. We just did a little 60-second spots when Roots was going to be put on afternoon TV, the movie of the week, or whatever the movie in the afternoon they used to have. So we did that. I mean, with things like that, the little tags on the commercials, like for gum and IDs for TV shows, TV news shows, and things like that. That's what a lot of that business was. It was just these little projects spread over small studios in different parts, most downtown and in Soho and places like that, run by one or two people.
Yeah. I got somebody sent me an interview. You remember who Richard Williams, the animator?
Yes.
Somebody sent me an interview with him. I don't remember the name of the movie that he did, which was entirely to demonstrate his animation sensibility. Nothing to do. He had no. I said, I'm not interested in the story. I'm not interested in. It's the characters and the action. It's absolutely stunning. But Richard, I mean, that was exactly what he was. It was just a little animation house that grew into being one of the most famous animators of all time. Anyway, moving on. So a little bit of SilverHawks.
Yeah.
And then a lot of comic strip.
Right.
I hardly dare ask you about comic strip because there's just so much that was just wrong with that show.
I would say with comic strip, it had his heart in the right place, but the execution just wasn't there. I mean, my favorite is the comic strip. I didn't like Street Frogs. I don't just don't like frogs. It tried to get on the hip hop thing, and it was nice. I liked Karate Cat. Karate Cat was my favorite of those pieces. The mini monsters, there's always been these things of childhood versions of the characters, so from Addams Family and Munsters and stuff like that. I didn't care for that stuff. What was the other one? Oh, TigerSharks. TigerSharks. I was really mixed feeling about TigerSharks. I mean, it's just what's her name? The Octavia's head. Whoa. The octopus head. It's like, yeah. I think the failure of the series was not so much the actual animation, the stories of them. It was that they formatted it in such a time that was the wrong format for what was happening in the business. The syndication was starting to fall apart, and then we were doing this. You show a beginning of the TigerSharks show on a Monday, and then the second half of it's supposed to be on a Tuesday, and the stations didn't want to do that. They didn't like that. They just wanted stuff that was self-contained so they can move it all around and not have to worry about scheduling it in succession. So I guess a lot of times they didn't. So it confused people. It was on at different times, and that happened with other shows too.
I don't remember that at all. I mean, we should come back to that. I don't remember that. But the thing about comic strip was, first of all, I mean, you're very generous about Street Frogs. I think it was. I think Street Frogs was a bloody travesty, actually. And I don't know whether you know, but I was sent to Washington to talk to Operation Push, Jesse Jackson's outfit, to talk about how we were portraying the. And I said, what am I doing here? I said, it's like it's a stupid show run by a bunch of middle-class people who don't know bugger all about anything, and the only writer of any cred whatsoever was Chris, who Jules basically sacked because he threatened Jules's musical input.
Oh,
So we'll put Street Frogs on one side, and of course, I always get asked why didn't you find this writer or that writer? Well, I couldn't. They just weren't up. I mean, and I say, well, in the 90s, there were plenty of black writers in Marvel. This was the 80s.
Yeah.
And by the way, New York, I couldn't even find white writers.
Yeah.
Let alone, anybody else who had any talent. Well, actually, I couldn't find anyone. So then you move on to mini monsters. Well, of course, I know absolutely bugger all about, summer camps in America. So I took that off to Lee Schneider. Um, and Tiger Sharks, action adventure was dead by then, Dennis. It just really, I think. I mean, that kind of action adventure.
Well, yeah, not from a guy who went on to do more action adventure. That was just to me, it was derivative of the ThunderCats, and
Exactly.
ThunderCats was lightning in a bottle that you cannot repeat.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and SilverHawks too. To me, it's like you're trying to do ThunderCats over. I never liked SilverHawks because I had come off of Galaxy Rangers, which was a semi, not serious, but it's at least a hardcore sci-fi type of show. So I didn't like that. These guys flying in space, no helmets, no. It's like, what is this?
Well, I tell you what it is fantasy. I mean, I love SilverHawks, but then I
okay.
I would. But Tiger Sharks. I didn't think maybe you're right. I didn't find Silverhawks derivative of Thundercats, but I did find Tiger Sharks very generic. And like you, I love Karate Cat. And what we should have done is we just should have had that show.
Yeah.
That should have been it. And it could have been a little wilder in design and story. And I think that might have been successful.
Yeah.
Or relatively.
It's been interesting as we've been talking with the guests that we've had. It seems like everyone that worked on it really did like Karate Cat, and really kind of out of everything on the comic strip, that was the one that stuck out to the actual crew, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that it's really a throwback show too in many ways. I mean, it's got its origins in all that kind of Reagan Chandler, Black Mask. Was it called? What was the magazine called? Was it Black Mask? Anyway, all those detective, comic strips and magazines, and of course, we had Bill and Len to write it, and I grew up from my father reading to me or making me read all those Private Eye novels, which I loved then and still do. So we can move on with never mind comic strip. Go on to the next one that you just were talking about before we came on.
Which one was that?
Or the semi live action.
Oh yes, CVTV.
CVTV. Well, after ThunderCats was going to close, they knew it was going to have their last. They needed something. Okay, what happened from my recollection, recall was ThunderCats was ending. Rankin Bass Lowmark Pictures sold got bought by Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they needed another show to Warner Brothers to continue production. And at the time, budgets were going in a toilet, and so they had to think of ways to do a cheaper animation show, and that was going to be CVTV, which was going to be a hybrid sort of talk show about comics and media. Was sort of a bit ahead of its time, actually.
Yeah.
And it was going to be. Let's see. It was a live action, like it's Tonight Show. Here's the crew doing stories and stuff like that, and they had the background, and they had licensed independent comics. One of them was California Girls, which was by Tina. Oh, I forgot her last name, but a very well-known female artist. One was called Radio Boy, which is a sort of takeoff on Japanese anime, which was slightly racist, but that's okay. It was more spoofing.
Everything was slightly racist.
Yeah. Well, it was more spoofing. Remember, in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't a lot of Asian films out, and anime hadn't really hit. But the live action Asian movies we were seeing, monster movies and things like that, a lot of them would be cheap and have bad dubbing. It's like the Woody Allen movie that was, where he dubbed, Radio Boy was sort of playing on that, sort in a way. So but the format for the show CVTV was going to be, you had 3 comic hosts who were stand-up comedians who no one knew at all. They were just still rising in their business, and they were supposed to do interviews and show these do animated segments of these independent comics because they were cheap to get. Yeah,
Right. Makes sense.
they were cheap to get. And also puppet animation. They had some of their, they do the Warlock, one of the Warlock things from Masaki and those guys. So that was the show. And I did put it, the pilot is on my YouTube channel. You can watch the whole thing.
And, sorry, not to cut you off. So what is your YouTube channel? It's YouTube.com. So as a Dragonfly Entertainment?
Yeah. Or you can just put my name in on YouTube and it'll pop up.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, the link is on the screen and then also in the comments.
Yeah, put a link. You click. I got one of my cards has my QR code on it, so I'll show you that. But what happened with that is when it came time to get Masaki didn't want to do it. I knew that. We sent him storyboards. And Arthur told me to sit down with Masaki and go through the storyboards because when the storyboards came back, I said, Masaki, you need more animation in this. And he just sat there and said, well, Masaki, if you have the character move from here to here, could you add some? He said, no, that's gonna cost you more. And he did that on everything I showed him, and at the end I was just laughing. Masaki, what about this? No, that's more animation. No. How about this character doing? No, we're not good. That's more animation. So I said, okay, fine, you go do it. Go do what you have to do. When the show came back, Peter, I think you were gone by now.
Yeah, I
don't remember any of this. So they animated the segments, and they sent us back to us, and we had a conference. I guess it's Arthur's a conference room up there, which I rarely was in, and he showed us the animation that came back from Masaki. And we're all sitting there, and Arthur's closest to the screen with his back to us. And when the reel finished, and I told this to friends of mine, and they just crack up. He turned around to all of us and said, "We got nothing." He said, "We have nothing." But they had to put a presentation together to go to California to Warner Brothers to show them the show, to try to sell it. When Arthur came back from that business trip, he just gathers all this together and said, "We're closing."
Oh, wow.
That's what he said. He said, "Those guys hate our guts. They don't like us because we're from the East Coast. They're not going to give us any kind of money." And they were prepared to shut us down before we got in the door.
Wow.
So that's how that's my recollection of how Rankin Bass closed. And we started
at that point. There was you, Lee, I presume.
Yeah.
Arthur, Jules, Peter Bacalliot, and that's about it, right?
And Chuck.
Oh, and Chuck.
I think Chuck was still there. Yeah, Chuck was still there.
The survivor.
And some of the girls, the secretaries who were, support staff. And there was one, I forgot her name. There was Arthur had an assistant, a young black assistant who used to be in the military.
Really?
I remember.
That must have been after my time.
Yeah, it must have been after you left. But that was and I started reading it got me into reading the business sections of newspapers because Lorimar Television sold to Warner Brothers. I started seeing these things, which included the ThunderCats and Rankin and Blast. I said, "Oh, shucks, I think I got to start, looking for a job."
Jeez.
And it was close.
Well, my first contact with Rankin Bass way before ThunderCats was on a movie of the week, and Rankin Bass was then Arthur, Jules, and Lee, and that was it.
Sure.
And then we staffed up for ThunderCats. We had at least 10 people,
Yeah.
and that thing about the West Coast and the East Coast. When I went to Los Angeles to look for writers, it was insulting. The one person who was incredibly welcoming was the doorman at the Westwood Marquee. And I think it was the Westwood Marquee. As I walked up the steps, he said, "Mr. Lawrence, and how are the ThunderCats?" How the hell did you know? That was the one, I went to agents, looked for writers. It was insulting. It's like, you guys, and I think at that time, even then, I think ThunderCats was a smash. I don't remember, but I think it was. It's like, you people don't know how to write animation. You people, yeah. It just was unbelievable to us. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's
So,
wild. No, I was just about to say that's wild that just because ThunderCats Rankin Bass is they're based in the East Coast in New York, California, whatever it was, production companies, writers, talent, whatever it was, had no interest in being involved.
Again,
I mean, Dennis, sorry, Dennis will correct me, but I think it was also because we had, for want of a better phrase, the Rankin Bass method system, which was completely different from how they animated in Hollywood or the West Coast. And I think they despised it.
Yeah. Well, also, if you look at that time, like in California, even there was a upheaval when classic places like not Warner Brothers, but Hanna-Barbera and those places started to close because they were sending stuff overseas. And actually, that might have been some of the animosity. Is like Rankin and Bass was already doing that.
Okay, right.
And Mel, I mean, I have friends like Larry Houston and Will Mineo. Those guys go back to like Hanna-Barbera and some of the earlier filmation where they were still doing, Space Ghost and stuff like that, really limited animation. But Rankin and Bass started using overseas studios. And that was a big shift in California when they started to use overseas studios, and the older studios started to close. There was a lot of resentment with that, especially with the unions. And I speaking in New York, because in the 70s, when I was, like I said, I worked in a little small studios. When in the 80s, I happened to work with the two studios that did animated series. Almost the only two studios doing animated series. One was Transcom Media, which did Galaxy Rangers. We did 52 episodes, an insane amount of time, and working with Rankin and Bass with, ThunderCats. And ThunderCats was in the studio. Actually, they were across the street from the Image Factory, the small studio I worked at, did mostly in commercials. ThunderCats was across the street from them. They were in the Paley building, which is like by this little tiny pocket park, famous pocket park. The George Paley was one of the founders of, I think, CBS or something like that. And there was a museum there. A museum of broadcasting was in that building. Right. And they had a hand-operated elevator. What was his name? I forgot the elevator guy's name. He was so sweet. But it was a hand-operated elevator we went into every day. But again, there was most of the people, there were 10 people in the Rankin and Bass office. I was the only artist there sometimes. And 3 at Post. It was Tepe was there and Bob Camp, who went on to do Ren and Stimpy, and myself. We were the art department. And all I had to do was do drawings for backgrounds and characters and send them to PAC, and they did the magic. We didn't do the storyboards in New York.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that's the system. And if you remember Matthew,
they did everything. And only later on did studios in California start letting their foreign animation studios handle most of the work. And that was another big problem, is that we saw losing American market being lost and talent being lost and not utilized. I mean, it's kind of crazy because I had enough. My experience is, I worked for, we did the same thing with Galaxy Rangers. We did storyboards. We did the storyboards there. We did design the characters. We designed the backgrounds and stuff. And we sent over the design package. They sort of screwed it up by not having it timed out properly. That's a whole nother story. But that's sort of the model of Hollywood too. Rankin and Bass, they basically wrote the scripts, sent some designs over. I'm talking about my time there. I just had to do designs for characters, props that they asked for. And when the storyboards came back, you asked me, Peter and Lee would ask me to look through them for continuity errors, which I did. And I think that's one of the things that endeared me to Peter, is like I picked a couple of his mistakes. Mistakes in the storyboard. They said, hey, story a little bit. Okay, fine. So that's when they said, hey, you want to do a script or two? I said, sure, I'll do that. I never touched a script, except for myself, But in Hollywood, when I got there, I was supposed to work. It was interesting because I was actually supposed to work on G.I. Joe. I had been hired to work on G.I. Joe. But when I got there, my mom got sick and I had to come back east. And so I didn't get to work on it. But then I ended up meeting Larry Houston and those guys later on ExoSquad. But the method there is you had a whole crew that you had director, assistant director, then you had a model director, you had a model artist, you had a prop artist, you had a colorist, to do the pre-package and storyboard. And the storyboards were done, and Peter's been out there. If you do, the storyboards are broken up into half hours into 3 parts or 3 acts. And each, you have an artist that does like 10 minutes each, or 8 minutes really. But it's only a 20-minute show of storyboards. And that's how you get, I've gone through systems where I would do 1 act of a show. That's why I've accumulated my storyboard portfolio. But also when I went for ExoSquad, my first year was as overseas supervisor at ExoSquad, which meant I went and lived in Korea for 6 months. And I approved every scene to make sure it matched the storyboard and to make sure that the materials from the studio matched what the animation studio needed. Okay. So that was my job as overseas supervisor. Second year, I was a co-producer and director. That's when I moved to LA. And I got to design characters again for ExoSquad. And I think I designed like 30 or something characters. And 2 of them got to be made toys, man.
Yeah, I know. We had talked about that when we had talked with doing
So yeah, it's a totally different. It was more of a factory assembly line, larger assembly line factory, not a custom house like a Rankin and Bass would be like a custom car house, where Hollywood was definitely a factory.
Yeah, but again, Dennis, you correct me, but I think the thing that really made Rankin Bass, I think it's unique and not just unusual, is that we send those lot tracks with all the timing that Tony or Matthew or Lee, this is going to take Lano this long to get from the bathroom to the kitchen, and by and large, I mean, you can see when you look at the stuff closely, that's a bit of a stretch, but by and large, they were pretty good at that. Yeah. Well, but that's a lot, for want of a better way of describing it. I mean, for people watching, if there's of any interest, that's sort of locked off. In Hollywood, you're slugging, the timing system is completely different, right?
Yeah.
The way that it's, and when you were a supervisor, did you deliver the materials back to LA rough cut?
Yeah, I guess it would. I mean, it was when like you said, we have a slugging system where you had an animation director basically would do timing sheets already set out, timing sheets for especially for lip movement to the dialogue, and slug for the action. So you had that already done, and usually when you got it, when it came back, you see if it worked or not, and then in the editing you might take out some stuff.
Okay.
So but it was but that had to be very rare. You didn't you tried not to overshoot, animate. It was slugged to a lock track. Yeah.
Oh, because it was. So it wasn't a gash track. It was a real.
No, it was a real track. Yeah.
Right.
So that worked similar. You were just up in the air as if it looked good and came back. There's so many things that can go wrong, So
did you enjoy working as a supervisor?
yes, I did. I made some really close friends who I still keep in touch with from being over there, and one of them is my Senwan Lee, Kim, my translator. It has some good times there. It's like being in a totally submerged in another culture was very enriching. My wife got to come with me, so we lived there for 6 months. First month in a hotel, and then just by coincidence, her mother's husband in Florida, his daughter worked on an army base in Seoul, Korea, and they helped us get an apartment in Seoul, Korea, on top of this mountain, Nansam Mountain, they called it. And the apartment was called the Foreigner's Apartment. Okay. But it was mostly used for either embassy people, dignitaries, or industrial people. So we had this 2-bedroom apartment, which is larger than our New York apartment, that we lived in. For 6 months we were there.
Were you only a supervisor in Korea, or did you work in Japan as well?
No, only Korea. I visited Japan once for Gargoyles. My wife's sister was living in Tokyo. She had twins there with her husband. It's actually Swiss German, but it's a lot of different international stuff here. But when I got hired after ExoSquad, I got hired to go to Disney TV and work with Frank Parr and Greg Weisman. Greg Weisman is the creator of Gargoyles. But I told them I couldn't start when they wanted me to start because I was going to Tokyo to visit Lisa's sister. But they said, well, since you're going to Tokyo and we're having an animation studio in Tokyo, Disney asked, would you go at least take a visit, a half-a-day visit, which I did, and they took me out for lunch. But the thing is, when I got into the studio, one of the artists came up to me and was introduced and says, I worked on ThunderCats.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. And it was so great, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, right.
How deeply. Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
It's like, it was wonderful. It was just nice. It was nice. Because again, in even a lot of studios, I worked in Korea for the 6 months on ExoSquad, but I worked in the same studio was doing Animaniacs. They were doing some Simpsons. They were doing a Conan movie. So anyone tell me about American animation, if you really go to the end of the credits, all of it's overseas.
Mm-hmm.
The actual animation is overseas. So don't, it's very much an international affair and has been for decades.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't say it was started by Arthur, but he was the first one in Japan. I mean, he was, and of course, Masaki was then his driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as the exposure to animation was mostly, I remember before I I think I caught a glimpse of a ThunderCats episode on TV when I was working at this place, Image Factory. I said, "Wow, that looks really cool." It's like it was obviously anime, even though it's like the ThunderCats were fighting these giant robots or something like that. But I said, that's the Japanese animation was miles ahead of American animation at the time, and I started looking at some of that stuff. In fact, some of the first time I saw Akira, which is a classic Japanese anime, was at Rankin and Bass because they were talking about possibility of importing it.
Really?
And Arthur S. said, "Look at this, see what and tell me what you think about it." And I said, "This blows me away. This is like incredible stuff, you know." So yeah, I would look at some of the tapes he had for other animes that he had. And even friends of mine, if we were into it, we'd go to there was a small little video place, video rental place that was for Japanese diplomats' families. But they would rent it. They would rent us TV anime stuff. So we would see stuff that was not on American television.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. So
This, I was looking for or I am looking for a studio, and I came across a Japanese studio called Puro.jp, I think the address is. And I mean, you go through their reel. It's absolutely fantastic. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's all of a style, or it's not all of a style, but I mean, the timing, a lot of the that kind of classic hesitation between talking head with 3 cells.
Yeah.
Not cells now, obviously, and then 3 minutes of balls to the wall action.
Right.
And I love that style, but obviously it's not. It's not what we like, I suppose. I don't know, but I would love to go back there. I'd love to go back there. God forgive me for saying this, before Kubo and Nishida jump off. I'd love to go back and work with them on something. That would be great.
Yeah.
So
let's
go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I just kind of wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit here because I like to talk about Dennis. You obviously went from like character to going to ThunderCats on character design, but then you mentioned it a little while ago that you actually had the chance to then write a couple episodes.
Yeah.
And create the characters. So you have to create the characters that were actually in the episodes and write the episodes.
Yeah.
How do you remember how that kind of came about? I think you mentioned, Peter, he just answered, "Hey, do you want to write?" But was writing ever something you were kind of interested in, or how did that come about?
Well, I was always I've always written my again, I wanted to be a comic book artist, so I always made up my own characters from the time I was 12. Well, at least it is 12 my starting date of I started keeping my own sketchbooks.
Okay.
Well, I have my sketchbooks from 12 on, and wow, I would write my own characters or try to write stories, and really never complete whole series. But so I was doing my own little stories things. So when Peter asked me, I said, "Well, why not give it a shot?" And I had some ideas. I always like the Shadow Master really was about the cloak. But the first thing was it was supposed to be a magic cloak that the kids found, and they got in mischief with it, with the lunar tax, I think. But then I came to another idea. Well, it'd just be one guy. Should be just I think either Peter might have said, "No, we don't want to deal with the kids with that. Make it So I made it. Came up with the Shadow Master in the Shadow Realm, and I went back and looked at because I wasn't. I had to go back and review all the episodes at least once. I did, and I stuck in my mind that the father, Cloudus, disappeared. They didn't say he died. He just you assume that he died in the explosion of ThunderCats, the original Thundera or planet, whatever. But I said, well, maybe he didn't. Maybe he got captured by somebody and it's The Shadow Master captured him, took him to the Shadow Realm, and the Shadow Master wants to leave it, and he contacts Mum-Ra. But actually, the first idea I had for that was like when Lionel went into the Shadow Realm, he meets alternate ThunderCats called the Light Lancers, who had been defeated by Shadow Master. So there was like a whole nother world there. And Peter said, "You're out of your mind." He did an 80-page outline for a tweet. So no, cut this down. So I said, all right. Because I had this whole, the ending was going to be like at the end when Lionel helps him, all of a sudden this dark realm, this giant beam of light comes out and just spreads over the whole country. I had that image in my mind. Like any writer, I think, you fix it, you figure out the ending, and then how are you going to get there? Mm-hmm. So with the Shadow Master, it took, okay, Cloud is captured by the Shadow Master. He contacts Mum-Ra's, the evil guys, the pyramid guys,
ancient spirits of evil,
yep. And says, "Hey, I can, if you help me out, I'll defeat Lionel, and I just want to be free of this place." And of course, Mum-Ra doesn't like that. It's like, hey, this man's crowding on my territory. So that was the gist of it, and Peter is like, no, just cut it down. Let's get down to what's really needed. You only got 20 fucking minutes, man. You say, cut it down, which I did. And I'm very proud of it. I think it came out well, and I'm proud of it.
The toys of it. You're not doing me any favors here, because somebody's watching this and they're going to say, "What's the matter with you? Dennis's story was fantastic. Should have been,
it would have been a 5-parter."
Yeah, right now everyone watching wants to see that 5-parter now. Just saying. I mean,
right. Why not?
But then
that's it. I think, and don't misunderstand me. I'm not. I must. Oh yes, me. I don't mean that at all. But I think, we've talked about why was the show as a success. And I don't know, and I'll never claim to know. But I think one element might have been that we had, 5 or 6 writers of very different personalities, and they went in their own direction. And there was a bit of a dick of a story editor who said you can't do that. But apart from that,
I welcome the criticism. In fact, that's what this is right here. This is a scene from Shadow Master when Claudius is freed, and him and Claudius are holding the sword to defeat Shadow Master. That's the only reason I'm collecting toys, is I can find things like this that recreate the scenes in my shows. Right. That's why I want the toy companies to get off their ass and make more of the characters from my shows. Okay. Well, the second one I did. Let me just, because I'm going to actually do a show with what's their names? The retro guys who do the pod.
The David and Ryan.
Yes, I'm going to be on their show for Well of Doubt, the other story I wrote. And Well of Doubt, I looked at the notes the other day, and Peter is the one that suggested the second character that I had to make up. It was Baron Tass is the villain, who's like a landowner who enslaved people. But Peter said, no, you need somebody to like work off this guy. And so that's what Mr. Grover was Peter's idea.
Oh, okay.
The bookkeeper.
I mean, this is like another world. I don't remember any of it.
Of course you don't, but I have the notes. I have all your notes. I still have the notes from both shows. And right in there said, no, you need a stronger villain here. The villain needs a foil to sort of like, that you could work things off and give you backgrounds. And that was Peter's thing, was to make me do Mr. Grover for that show. And the Well of Doubt, it wasn't about Mr. Grover and his guy. I wanted to do a show with the giant terracotta warriors that were discovered in China.
Right.
That's what that story came from. I wanted to use those guys. So I can only have 2 instead of thousands. And the original idea was that it was going to be Wily Kid or Wily Cat. Which one is the female? I always remember.
Kid.
Kit. Wily Kid. The original story was that Wily Kid goes into a cave and discovers a crown that used to be Jagara, a lover of Jagara, or someone who was trying to win favor of Jagara, was a wizard, a young wizard. It might have been the Shadow Master, actually. But in any case, got this crown, and when the light struck it, it revealed this cave of thousands of terracotta warriors that thought she was their queen, and they followed her out into Thundera, New Thundera, to terrorize the land. But of course, they had one Achilles' heel, was water. So they walked into a river and dissolved. Yeah, it was that story. But then I changed it to be Mr. Grubber has found well a doubt, which is guarded by these two giant statues.
Mhm.
But again, it was I wanted to do something with those terracotta warriors. So that's how that story came about. And
Well,
from-
you know, one of Jules's first instructions to me was, because, you know, as everybody knows, I never wrote any animation. No swarms, crowds, or hordes.
Yeah.
You know, just one character, you know, and actually, I know that that's an economic and practical
Yeah.
thing, but also it does mean that you have to focus on that personality.
Yeah.
You know, you can't sort of diffuse it over an entire army.
Yeah, I found and work a lot in the series I worked on. Some of the hardest series is when you have these groups. I don't know how, you know, you're the Avengers and this and that. You're trying to give all these people screen time, or like you do what we did in in ThunderCats, and to be the first 5 minutes, you send people off on some mission so you can concentrate on the people who's going to be there. That's it, you know. That so
we've done that on, you know, playing around with another idea, and okay, I've got eight Thundercats now, or 10, or whatever. I said we've got to get rid of half of them. They got to go over there.
Yeah.
But and then he said, no, you can't do that. They're you know, it's like we like them, and so then okay, well, we'll cut away to what they're doing, and now suddenly you've got a 3-hour, 20-minute episode. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
And people forget what the show is about.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So Dennis, when did you actually, as it were, give it up? I mean, you went back to New York? Are you back in?
No,
What happened?
in 2008, things were changing in California. That, you know, they're doing more of the silly. I had already won an Emmy nomination for storyboard director for Ozzy and Drix, but I still had to take tests to get on jobs. You know, I did a test for weird stuff, Dora the Explorer, you know, things like that. There were a couple of jobs I tried that didn't work out, and it wasn't a good fit with I started to get discouraged, and I just said, well, you know. And I had a very dear friend that said, you know, you're not on anybody's list. People forget me. I was easily forgettable. But I worked on, I did Men in Black after Gargoyles. I did a Stan Lee Media directed video. I worked the storyboards. I directed and producer on NASCAR racers, which no one sees because it's buried in Disney's vaults. So they bought Saban Entertainment. What we were doing, there was like Will Mineo was doing Spider-Man Unlimited. My friend Joe Baruso was doing another show there, Cyber 9. All these shows that were, he got a bad reputation, but Saban Entertainment at his time was a really hot place. They would have like 20 shows going at the same time, including their biggest things with Power Rangers. And they recorded Power Rangers and, you know, redubbed it and added English actors and stuff like that. They were doing that. And I did NASCAR racers for 2 seasons, and it was one of the early hybrids, CGI, and 2D animations shows, and it looks really good. And I got to do a video of all the crap that I accumulated, the art and backgrounds. I still got a lot of it downstairs. But as I was storyboarding and freelancing, it just got demoralizing, where it's like, I'm struggling to find a job, because you got to keep your union benefits. You have to do like 80 hours or something a year. And it got to be a struggle. And luckily, my wife and I, we just looked at each other and said, well, the boys are going into elementary school. We had them in elementary school. We didn't like the school systems in California. They were just underfunded to the point where it was just harmful. So we had a chance. We decided, well, let's move back east. We'll move back to Rochester, where she was from. And I hit a rough patch where I said, I don't feel like I'm being either good at what I'm doing or being respected for what I'm doing. So I'm getting out of here. And I left. I just left. But we was lucky. The good thing was we left just before the crash of 2008, where the whole real estate market crashed. So we got a good, we took what we got from our house, and we were able to start again in Rochester. And I became a library employee at a public library. And then I got the civil service test for a librarian, senior library clerk. And I ended up getting a job at the Monroe Community College, and I stayed there 13 years.
Yeah. I think that, that whole thing about respect is very disheartening. It's very disheartening when, obviously nobody can ask for respect. You can't really say. We talked about this before Dennis came on board, about this show that I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, in your heart of hearts, you know that you've earned it. Mm-hmm. You know that you might have done some crap work, but you've also done some really good work. And you know that you know what you're talking about. And you know that a lot of the people that you're working with don't know what they're talking about. And that's a very, very hard place to be.
Well, and again, having a long enough career where I started, where it was your work, that got you the job, and your personality and your reliability in what you did, and I still get some of the listings for jobs in California sometime, or other places. And it's like, have you done this? Have you done that? Do you have this degree? I didn't care about degrees. I don't have a degree. Mm-hmm. I went to the School of Visual Arts. The 3 years I was there, they were just being accredited as a college. When I left, they got their accreditation. The class after me, started their degree program. Oh, jeez. So I didn't go back to get a degree because I was working and needed to have a job, so I never went back and got a degree. So technically, I'm a high school diploma guy who got lucky. Well, that's it. But it's about those days when you lugged your portfolio around and talked to people. It wasn't online. It wasn't that. And you just went by word of mouth. And luckily, someone would recommend you to. Like with Rankin and Bass, after I finished Rankin and Bass, I think there was one of the toy guys ended up working for King Features. And he recommended me to do a style guide for the Phantom for merchandise. So I did some of that. I did some toy designs for his company called Marketing Equity, that did Happy Meal toys. One of them happened to be a line of Disney Happy Meal toys. But, and I was walking when I worked at Disney on Gargoyles. I went to the executive area, and there was a display case, and there are the toys I designed.
Oh wow!
A lot of uncredited work. Dennis, if you don't mind, I just want to switch. you're a jazz guitarist, right? And your dad was a famous drummer, right?
I'm a lousy jazz player.
Are you? No, but honestly, are you a lousy jazz guitarist?
I play guitar. I won't say. I mean, I like to play jazz, but I can barely get through one song. But my father was Sam Woodyard, and he was the one of the regarded as one of the best Duke Ellington drummers from the '50s on. In the '50s till Duke Ellington died. One of his most famous appearances is the Newport Jazz Festival '56, I believe it was, when Duke Ellington came out and they just blew everybody away. My father was part of that. That was one of his first gigs with Duke Ellington. He actually died while I was still working for Rankin and Bass in '88. But he actually worked last year would have been his 100th birthday. And that year he had like 3 things got released that were like, one was a hidden record from the '70s with a pianist. And also they released an Ella Fitzgerald live date in California that he was on with her. So I mean, I started collecting his records and looking for his records from the '70s on, and CDs of what he did with Ellington. And I've met a couple of guys here in Rochester because it's small enough. Rochester has Eastman School of Music, which is very well known music school. And I got to be friends with some of the teachers there. One of is Bob Snyder, local guitarist who played with Chuck Mangione. And his trio, Mike Melito, is a drummer. And when they found out my father was Sam Woodyard, we got to be friends. But Mike was like, your father inspired me, that type of thing. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I fool around on the guitar still. I mean, I lose my calluses because I don't do enough of it. But it's one of those things I did.
So did he play regularly with Duke Ellington?
My father?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. He's on. I got a whole row of CDs over here that has him on. Yeah, he was one of Duke Ellington's main drummers from the '50s to the '70s. You can look him up. I found that he did other stuff with Quincy Jones. He worked with Quincy Jones for a while. He was on an album. Well, he was invited to do like one cut on an album with Buddy Rich. He was a friend of Buddy Rich, and my grandfather used to always tell me, "Hey, I gotta take you to New York City to Buddy Rich's place because he and Sam were close." I said, "You're full of shit," but yeah, but he did. Buddy Rich had him play on one of his albums, just play percussions on one of his albums. So he was a friend of him. I met when he died. I mean, I had to go to. He was estranged from the family. He like basically abandoned the family. But when I was working on Galaxy Rangers, the family got news from Dizzy Gillespie, the famous trumpeter, that hey, Sam is sick in Paris. You might want to go see him, which I did while I worked on Galaxy Rangers. The next 2 years, he was okay. He was dying of cancer, and when I got there, he recovered or went into remission. But he died when I was working with Rankin and Bass in '88. I went to Paris and brought back his ashes.
Wow.
So we reconciled whatever father-son bullshit that was there. It's like I was able to put that to rest. But yeah, it was wild. I mean, this guy's, and there's a guy on Facebook called the Duke Ellington Society that I belong with, who was good friends with my father when he was in Paris. So he publishes pictures of him and has remembrance of him, and we keep in touch. And I post there too. And it's just, that's the other side, the music and art. So
did he play with Chet Baker when he was in Paris?
I don't think so. I don't know. I remember him doing that. But he played with a lot of local musicians in Paris. And he played with some other smaller groups from the Duke Ellington. There's like they would split off sometimes and make other independent records. But yeah, he's all over the place. You have no trouble finding him online, and but it's like odd stuff. And I see like what's the artist Moreau? Duke Ellington did a thing where he's playing a little trio with my father and the bass player in the in Moreau's sort of like garden. And I'm saying,
Wow.
God damn, how many, that whole thing of 6 degrees of separation.
I find that fascinating. All that stuff.
Yeah.
And when you look back, you don't even realize it was happening to you.
No.
And you suddenly think, wait a minute, did I do that? Or, do you know what I mean? That whole, I don't know, the sort of spider.
That reminds me, I was going to mention when I was doing the animation with Image Factory in New York, one of the clients we had, you know who George Lois is? George Lois is a very famous designer. You know the Esquire cover with Muhammad Ali with the arrows in him, that's George Lois. I met him. I told him no to his face. I didn't know who he was. He was one of the clients. We were doing commercial, and his ad agency was one of the clients we worked with, and his director had me do an overnight shoot on something. It was really stupid. I think it was I don't even remember what the product was. It could have been gum or something like that. And we had a slight mistake in it. She wanted us to change it. And it was like, I had been up all night. I had delivered the film at like 12 o'clock at night, had to pick it up at 8 o'clock in the morning to show them at 9. And she said, well, can we get another shoot today? And George Lois just watched them right there. And I said, no, can't. My director, my old friend of mine, Brent Oswald, he did a spit take. Because I was saying no to George Lois, award-winning director. So yeah, little things like that sometimes, like, ooh. I mean,
I think we've come up a bit over the hour, so I would love to have you back on, and I mean, maybe with a couple of other, I don't know, artists, or not necessarily even from ThunderCats, but I mean, I'd love to talk to Larry, and I've never worked with him. I've met him a few times. I think I did work with him once. I think he fired me. I mean, it's just, there's so many interesting people, and I don't know. Maybe I'm kidding myself, but I think a lot of them are actually more interesting than a lot of the people working now. I think they're just a lot more interesting stories, and it was just a little bit looser, a little bit wilder. So anyway, we'd like to get.
I'd like to come. There were a couple other stories with ThunderCats stuff that people don't realize that. When I was at Warner Brothers, there was an artist there. I forgot his name. Who was actually trying to get a version of ThunderCats done.
Oh, really?
And I'll have to send you I have it on my blog.
Right.
And he went on to do Airbender, the Avatar the Airbender. But he had a book. He had redesigned characters. He was trying to do it. And that's when the Wildstorm comic came out.
Okay.
That Wildstorm comic, if you look at the first Wildstorm comic, it features Shadow Master.
Yes, yeah, right.
That one.
Yep.
That's the piece of original art from it that I bought off
eBay,
because I wanted that picture of Shadow Master. But Peter Verkalian told me that before Warner's did that, they were checking on who owned the rights to it. And Peter had to gently tell him, go talk to your people. You own it. You have owned it for the past 10 years. It's like,
Unbelievable.
stuff like that. And
I
they
wish he
actually
hadn't done
had,
that. I mean, he should have told him that he had the rights
yeah.
Right.
because they wouldn't know.
Again, when I was at Warner Brothers, I actually had a meeting with Ron Myrick, who was my director on Ozzy and Drix, and Mark Wald, the comic book writer. He has a new project out right now. There was a preliminary talk about doing the ThunderCats, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to be part of that. But it didn't happen. And then they went on to do the second 2011 one, I guess it was.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was floating around. It was always floating around. No one can quite put their finger on it. So, and these horrible ThunderCats. Go. Never mind. Never mind.
The ThunderCats Roar, which is a
Roar.
yeah, right. It's a sore thumb to many people when it comes to ThunderCats.
Well, we'd love to come back and regale you with the other crap that I've done in my life.
Yeah, no, we should do it. And I've got questions, but yeah, I mean, lots more. We're doing. I don't know, Buddha. We've got quite a lot in the can at the moment, right?
Oh yeah. We've got a bunch, but yeah, we definitely have to have you back on, Dennis, because I would like to talk even gargoyles and things like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff we still have to talk about,
Right.
Excuse me.
And it'll be fun to get a few of the crew together.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Chuck.
It would just be fun.
Yeah.
So we'll do it. Dennis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
But again, everyone watching, thank you for joining us today. Dennis, thank you for being here. Can't wait to have you on next time. Anybody watching, please feel free to leave in comments if you have questions for Dennis based on his career, whether it's ThunderCats, outside of ThunderCats. Please let us know. And the next time he's on, we'll be able to, ask him any of your questions. And hopefully he's got answers. If it's, he's got those giant books. He's got a lot of information that from what you had worked on. So we actually might be able to get very episode-specific answers for people, which is something we don't get a lot of these days. So that would be absolutely fantastic. Again, anyone, leave your questions in the comments. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell to make sure you get notified anytime Beyond Thundera Podcast puts out anything new. Again, Dennis, thank you for being here with us. We will see you next time. We will see everyone else next time. And until then, ThunderCats ho.
ThunderCats ho.